All right, I got my coffee and I got my cheesecake. Now let's talk about Last of Us Episode 1. I've been waiting for this for months. It's very exciting. I don't even know where to start exactly, but there are 4 things that I wanted to cover here that I think are pretty important as far as examining how this first episode went. So the first one's going to be tone, second one's going to be composition, the third one I want to review is pacing, and then the fourth one is kind of like overall expansion of the narrative. Let's get right into it. First off, the difference in tone is definitely a thematic turn that I didn't expect, as the show approaches the outbreak in a much softer way than the game. The day in the life of Sarah offers more dimension and personality to her character than what we get to experience from the source material. Joel, depicted as a broken man, plays very well in the TV adaptation, embodying the transformation from a loving father to an emotionless frame in the QZ, and a more explicit rendition of the demonstration and tone can be identified in the color grading of the show. For example, everything is a bit more vivid and warm in contrast to the colder, desaturated mood that the game displays. The show definitely leans heavy on the orange and teal motif. If anything, I believe that this color grading is definitely effective in evoking kind of like the last grasp of hope, just because of that little softer tonality that they kind of run through in the show. Whereas you get this very dreary mood from the get-go. You know that things aren't gonna end up okay, and everything seems a little bit more detached in the source material. Okay, next up, I want to talk about the composition. But first of all, I gotta tip my hat to the cast, the crew, the cinematography, and basically everybody that was a part of this that really brought this show to life. I mean, to adapt this beloved story with such accuracy and appreciation of the source material, and at the same time bring a fresh vision to this iconic story is definitely super appreciated. I'm loving it so far. The attention to detail can't be ignored even from these scenes. Like you got Joel's guitar in the background, but you also have it in the game. Like even this elliptical that's in Joel's room is very subtle, but it's there, and you know they paid attention to that. Even to the painting above Joel's bed is basically the same. I can distinctively see how making sure that Neil Druckmann was a part of this production made a world of difference. You got these horizontal flips that kind of feel like mirror images from the game, but they're not. So it's obviously demonstrating, hey, we're being faithful to where all of this inspiration came from, but we're also going to make it our own. We're going to flip it on you. I believe that the writers definitely found a way to subvert the audience, especially for the long-time loyal fans that are, obviously expecting visual illustration of this story to come out in one particular way. The writers took a cue and definitely are using that to their advantage to fake us out. Now, just because they were this faithful in the first episode doesn't mean that this is something that I would necessarily expect all throughout the season. So I would just be mindful of that, because there's plenty of areas where I can see them taking a bigger turn away from the mainline story. I definitely keep an eye out for that. I definitely see how important it was to be very accurate and faithful to the source material in this first episode, while also kind of bringing it to the bigger mainstream audience. But also, I love the fact that there are storylines and background contextualization that the players didn't get in the game.
Not bacteria, not viruses, so fungus.
So to me, it shows that Last of Us, Naughty Dog, PlayStation, all of them are still very much intending to bring more value to the fans and rewarding them for their trust and their loyalty to bring this passionate adaptation of their beloved game onto the big screen. Another aspect of this composition that I want to point out is the use of these mid shots. There are so many of these mid-frame shots that kind of were reminiscent of this third-person perspective of the game while you're playing it, and I thought that was very genuine, immersive, and also very faithful to how the source material approached this perspective. Next up, let's talk about the pacing of episode 1. This was super surprising to me because I thought that they were going to go way quicker than they actually did. I had streamed The Last of Us Part 1 remake earlier Sunday afternoon just to kind of get a sense and get hyped for the premiere. But I was also, the whole time I was guessing, where are they going to end this first episode? Is it going to be here? Is it going to be here? This seems like a good spot. Ultimately, I was over on my prediction, but when I look back at the stream and I see the runtime of the show being 85 minutes, and looking back, it's almost near perfect to where you would normally get into the game, and I thought that was incredible. I don't know if that was coincidence, but it doesn't feel like it was. It feels like very intentional, and it's very impressive how they made that happen. You'll notice that they took out Robert's entire quest basically out of the adaptation, but they added, your morning with Sarah, the beginning intro giving contextual background to how this pandemic could even happen, and even alluding to like global warming contributing to this process, which are more relatable to this modern day and age, and also giving more time to introduce Marlene as a pivotal character in this story. To me, it was an exceptional add-on because I thought that was really smart. The most noticeable omission to me was definitely the infection no longer being spread by the spores, as we determined through the lack of masks used when dwelling through the tunnels and roaming around. But my wife had a little interesting theory about this.
It's maybe spread by flour.
Flour?
Mm-hmm. So you know how the grandma was eating biscuits?
Uh-huh.
Was being force-fed biscuits.
Oh, okay.
And then pancakes in the morning for Joel's birthday.
Uh-huh.
But then couldn't make pancakes because there was no pancake mix, like no flour.
Oh.
I thought we was having pancakes.
And then Joel also said no to the biscuits because he's on the Atkins diet.
Huh. That's an interesting take.
And then it would make sense because then the fungus that they have there, maybe it's spread by food instead of, like the fungus could be growing on the food, but instead of it being through the spores in the air.
Okay, I like it. Last but definitely not least, we're going to talk about the expansion of the narrative here. I feel like they added an entirely new dimension to the world of The Last of Us that definitely enriches the source material. I think Blessing Adeoye Jr. from Kinda Funny Games definitely said it best.
Everything in this show feels like it is contributing to the actual story, where it does feel like, was this left on the cutting room floor? Like, was this stuff that you just weren't able to include in the game because it feels so core to the story that you're telling? And even moments that were retreaded, that were retold, feel a bit more expanded and a bit more grounded in a way where in the scene.
And that the biggest takeaway for me, I would say, is the removal of the singular perspective of Joel. It definitely broadened up the scope of compelling narrative to a greater world affected by this pandemic, introducing interpersonal relationship with Fedra soldiers, opening Marlene as an ambitious strategist instead of a wounded commander.
I need it for a better reason than you do. No offense, but Tommy's just one man.
And an expanding on the threads of those who helped and it also inhibit Ellie and Joel's journey. There's a lot of room for them to play with. I can't wait to see where else they take this to. Definitely did not take away from anything that I love about the game. It only added more perspective and context. I'm going to be streaming The Last of Us Part 1 remake every week before the next episode comes out on Sunday. And you can watch me on Twitch. I would love to have you there. And if you're like me and you're going to be inhaling as much Last of Us content that you can possibly take, please consider subscribing. I'm a small channel and I'm so excited to dig deep, and I'd be super grateful for you to join that journey with me. So thank you for watching and take care of yourself and each other.